Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on another Penn reel. This is the Penn Clash 3000. This is one step up from the Penn Battle, Fierce, and Pursuit line. And well, it came in for its annual service. We're going to take care of that. We're going to show you how to take the reel apart, how to examine the pieces and parts, clean it up, lubricate it, get it back out as part of the regular service. So we start by removing the exterior pieces. As I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like to learn more about how to service fishing reels. And well, maybe you have one that you're about to service and you want some tips and techniques. And that's all what this channel is about, teaching you how to do it yourself and giving reels a second chance. One of the things you'll notice, this is an earlier Clash. This has the spool bearing on top of the axle shaft, and the latest Penn Battles now have also incorporated that bearing on the shaft, in addition to the Penn Fierce line now. So Penn Fierce 3s also have a bearing, but the earlier versions did not. So that's kind of an upgrade that was on this one that has now become more standard in their product line. This is a 3000 size reel. 3000 size reels are okay for inshore ocean, but predominantly it's a freshwater river lake kind of a reel. It has a nice capacity, it's braid ready, and well, it's got a lot of fishing in it, and we're going to show you how it's made. We removed the spool and the adjuster knob. Now we'll take the handle off. The handle comes off by turning it in the opposite direction that you turn it to retrieve the line. When you take the pieces and parts off, I recommend two things. I recommend a part strategy so you know what you're going to do with the parts when you remove them. I use a parts tray. And I also recommend that you take pictures at critical junctions in the service of the reel, so that if you get lost, you have a reference point in those pictures. It'll tell you the orientation, it'll tell you what sequence you took them off in, and sometimes more importantly, where the piece goes, well, when you forget. There's 3 case screws and a bump guard screw, so there's probably 4. There might be one down here. I will take those screws out. When I remove them, I put them into a parts tray, and I also make sure that those pieces and the screws are all the same size. If they're not, like the bump guard one was smaller, I want to note where the smaller, the longer, the shorter, the one with the rough threads versus the machine threads, whatever it is that makes that screw different, I want to make sure I know where that screw goes. So when it comes time for reassembly, I put it in its proper place. We have one more screw to open up the case. These are Phillips head screwdrivers. I think this is a number 1. Tends to work well. All 3 of those screws confirm they are the same size. And now we should be able to remove the case, get our first look inside. So it's time for a service. This is pretty dirty inside here. It's got some kind of browned up grease in there. Penn's grease is green, or an aqua color, so it's not that. So when you do your reel service, you want to make sure you clean all the pieces and parts. Like we're doing here, I'm using a paper towel. And once you take that off, you can spin your reel down to give yourself access to the screw that is holding the axle shaft in to the crosswind block. We'll remove that. I like to keep a paper towel on my desk. That way I don't get too much more grease on the board that's been there. And that also, well, kind of helps me to wipe things off when it comes time to cleaning. So we've just removed the axle shaft. You want to check and inspect. You don't want to find any burrs or corrosion and the like. And since this one has a bearing up top, it appears to be a sealed bearing. If you put a drop of oil on there, it can work its way through that rubber seal over time, so it's kind of recommended to do that. We have a bearing on the front side of the main gear now, I'll wipe off the old grease. I'll do the same thing, just a drop, see if it works its way in. You don't need to do too much. Place that into the parts tray. Come around. You'll notice I'm wearing a glove. I like to keep most of that dirt and debris off my hands if I can, and that's the purpose of the glove. I just kind of remove that. We should be able to pull up and out on this now, and you'll see that there's no grease on the teeth itself. All the grease has been thrown off by centrifugal force. Now, we're going to clean that up. So I believe this was another piece of the what makes the Clash different from the Battle, and that is the cut on these gears. I believe this is a CNC cut gear, and I believe now, again, with that the newer versions of the Battle, they've moved up in terms of the gearing and the components in those gears as well. But again, this one's probably a 5-year-old reel now, and at that time it was demonstrably better than the Battle in terms of materials. Alright, just a little bit more on here. And there's caked on shellac, which means it's been a little while since this reel's been serviced. You should service your reels on an annual basis. This one probably has gone a little bit longer than that based on the dirt and debris inside. I've got the majority of that old grease off. Now I'm going to use a hard bristle brush. This is one of those 3-packs that you can get in dollar stores and hardware stores and the like. It usually has a brass brush, an iron, steel, kind of a metal brush, and it also has like a softer brass kind of a brush. If you don't have one of these, you can use a toothbrush. That'll work fine. Alright, next up we're going to take that crosswind block out. To get that crosswind block out, you need to pull out this little post here. This one's being a little bit stubborn, but it comes out from below. It goes into my parts tray. Now you can remove that. So if you're looking at what makes this different from the Battle, you have the post here, and you also have a transition gear here. So you have two gears really that are responsible for the oscillation, and that means it should be smoother. You won't have that kind of a wobble that sometimes happens in oscillation gears. That's not a new thing. If you go back to the 1950s or early 1960s, I have to tell you, I'm not certain exactly, but Shakespeare had one called the Sea Wonder, and it had the same thing. It had a double gear for your oscillation system, so it's not like that just got on the marketplace. And most of the time, when you're working on fishing reels, you notice the things that have changed, and well, the things that have stayed consistent for a long time. As an example, I always say fishing reels just aren't that difficult to figure out. A big gear turns a little gear. That turns something to collect the line, whether it's the rotor on a fixed spool or it's the spool itself on a conventional reel. It turns something to collect the line, and there you go. All right. Notice on the back of your oscillation gear, you do have a plastic washer, Teflon probably. And now we have the case opened up that we can go clean that. Before I do that, one more step here is to take the rotor off. Again, I keep my parts separate so that they're easy to find, and I'm using my parts tray to do that. And then let's see if we can find a wrench to take that off. Nope, not yet. Eventually we will get there. All right, got it. I like this rotor nut because it's got a tight side and an open side. You can't miss what side goes where, and also you can't over tighten the reel because of the shoulder on that. There is a plastic ferrule inside the pinion gear here. Note that if it comes out, that's where it belongs. Sometimes folks have a little bit of a tough time trying to figure out where did that little piece come from. All right, we should be able to move up and out on this now. And when I take the rotor off, I've inspected the bail before. If the bail is working fine, all you need to do is put a little bit of an oiling on the seam and on the line rollers. That'll keep it lubricated, and it'll flush out any dirt and debris that might be in there. All right, we have what appears to be a symmetrical cap. It's got 3 screws in it holding down the pinion gear shaft and the anti-reverse clutch. So this is the last pieces that need to be removed from the reel. Again, I'm taking my time to put these next to each other to make sure that they're all the same size screw. Every now and then, particularly on this inner piece here, there is a difference on the screw, and sometimes there's a difference on the hold down. So just take your pictures and know how it goes. All right, there's 3 of those screws. They're going to go into my parts tray in another one of those corners. So is the top cap that's holding it. And now we should be able to pull up and out on your pinion gear stack. Now I can take my penetrating oil, wet down the case, and go in and mop up the dried greases in there. This is a metal case, so if you're looking at some reels, you're going to find that they're graphite cases only. Those are subjected to frame twist. I think that might be the Pursuit. Some of them are a combination. The handle side that is removable is graphite, and the main body is metal, and then there's some that are all metal. Just know that there's varying degrees of materials used in there, types and the like, and well, understand the roles of each and why some are used and why some aren't. Graphite tends to be lightweight, metal more rigid. Okay, well, let's take this part off now. That'll be the last part that we go on. This is pretty much a standard stack in almost all of the Penn spinning reels. You have a collar with a bearing embedded in above it, and you'll notice underneath that there is a recess to the bottom of the bearing. That's because the inner sleeve for your anti-reverse clutch rides proud of the clutch. So notice that's the way that this is going to come off. And underneath on this reel, the bottom side of your anti-reverse clutch is a white plastic. You have rollers inside. You do not oil or otherwise lubricate an anti-reverse clutch. I get a lot of questions. My anti-reverse is slipping. Why is that? Well, typically somebody has put oil on there, and that's a friction-driven device. So put the oil on there, and it will cause a slip. And this one's got oil on it here as well. How does that happen? A lot of times folks just kind of get to the rotor, and they put a squirt of oil in there. It runs down the pinion gear, runs onto this, and well, then you got a slip. So do not oil. Okay, we'll leave one more off here. Again, these are sealed bearings. On the bottom of this one, there's a little shim washer that goes before that gets loaded onto the gear. Again, we'll just put a little drop of oil on there. We're going to do the same thing with the pinion gear here that we did with the main. We're going to just use that brush to pull through. Examine the teeth. Make sure that they're all uniform, that they're not chipped, cracked, bent, or in some other way out of alignment. Then we can just work to put this back together again. Put that washer on first. Bottom bearing, sleeve, anti-reverse clutch, white side down, top bearing, recess side down. There you go. That's your stack. All we need to do is to grease the bottom. And we can start to reassemble the top end of this reel. Remember, there is a white collar inside here that kind of is a shim or a guide for the axle shaft. And if it's not there and it's on your bench, that's where it goes. Okay, there is a little rubber band here, which is a seal. So make sure you line that up and around before you put your top plate on. I'm just going to use a pick to hold that in place. Because me and these 3 screws, we're going to have fun. I just do not do well with small screws. So I guess if we can eliminate some of the pieces on this, all the better for it. All right, that's one that's going down. While I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this fishing reel or any fishing reel, maybe you're working on one and things aren't going according to plan, maybe you're running into some difficulty and you want to see if I can't help you out with that, just leave the questions in the comment section. I will try to answer those for you. Normally I'll answer questions in the morning, so if you're watching this in the evening and you have a question, it's not a 24/7 help line, but I do try to answer them in the morning. Okay, take that pick out. Let's bring the last one in here. And I guess I'm not having as much trouble with these small ones because you have that little lip on the collar which helps to hold it. Well, this belongs to Captain Dave. Captain Dave is a pilot. He works with dredges, and he gets to go do some fishing because he's always on the water. And he asked me to tune these up. All right. A little bit of grease onto the post which holds this smaller oscillation gear. That's a 2-step gear, so one is going to drive off the main gear, the other is going to drive into the other oscillation gear. This is the other oscillation gear. Again, we've checked the teeth, we've cleaned them. A little bit of grease. Get it on the face. When you go to install this one, make sure that the point is facing down, because you're going to want to put your anti-reverse in there, and that's about the only way it can get in. All right, let's load in our crossline block on that. Oh, you know what I'm thinking? Let's go put the rotor back on, because all of those pieces and parts may fall out when I go to put the axle shaft on. So the rotor goes on. You want to take the rotor nut. Let's tighten that up. And then we have the hold down clamp. And then we have that hold down screw. And when you use a parts tray, it's pretty easy to do this. Find the pieces and parts, not have to run around wondering if you knock something off your bench. And there's different ways to manage your parts. Just make sure you're using one that you're comfortable with and one that's going to keep all the pieces and parts safe. All right, we're over to the crossline block now. That's where we were going to go before we decided to reinstall the rotor. There's a slot on the back. Make sure you get grease in that, and make sure that that slot goes over the stud on the oscillation gear. Once that's on now, you can take the post that comes through the bottom, through the arm of the oscillation gear, and then it rests in the case. And make sure you clear the bottom here when you do that. Next up then is our main gear. Again, we've cleaned that up. I'm using the Penn grease, not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's a fishing reel grease, and I recommend that you only use fishing reel greases. They're not that expensive. They have the marine properties that are going to help with exposure to water, and in this case, this is the grease the reel came with, so you can feel confident that the designers of this have the same grease in mind for you when you're doing it. All right, I'm just trying to bring it down so that I have access to that hole there. The little bar wants to run away on me. It's time to do the axle shaft. Very light coating of grease. We pointed out that plastic part inside the rotor. If you put too much grease on, it just gets scraped off by that plastic piece. Bring it in, bring it through the hole in your cross wind block. Go get that little cross wind block screw. Again, this is a perfect reason why to use the parts tray, because something like that can get lost in a hurry. All right, we're going to tighten that down. Next up is the bearing that goes on the main gear. And we did put a drop of oil on there. And I'm looking in my parts tray and saying, oops, there's an oops here. You know what it is? Did you see it? Just going to take a moment. We have to back it off a little bit here. Post has got to come off. Cross wind block has got to come out. And that's the oops. We didn't put the screw that holds down your oscillation gear in. And another benefit for having a parts tray. You can look in that parts tray, and if you have any extra pieces and parts left over, well, you didn't put something back correctly. All right, let's use that to tie down, and we'll just repeat those steps just in case you weren't paying attention the first time. Okay, quiz time. What goes next? Of course, it's that cross wind block. Over the stud, bring the guide rail in. Make sure that it seats up in the top of the case and does not extend below the bottom. Bring our main gear back in. Bring your axle shaft down where you're extended too much, so just kind of rotate your reel until it comes back down again. And we can grab that little screw, put that in, and now we're back on track. Just a little detour. Pay attention to details. Don't panic. Don't rush. All right. All right, everything checks out now. Oiled, lubed, cleaned. Everything is in the right position. Just making sure that I'm not proud here. I'll bring our side plate back on now. Nice crisp snap. Make sure that all of the seams are tight. And then we have those 3 screws that go in next. I'm going to put that bottom one in, and then I'm going to put the bump guard on because I don't want that rail to fall out of the bottom while I'm working on the rest of the reel. If it does, then I got to take the whole case apart again. So put it on right now. Screw that holds it. Tighten that one down. And now we can put those other 2 case screws in, put the handle on, and service the drags, and we'll be on our way to returning this reel to Captain Dave and letting him go do some fishing. This one's ideal for where he fishes. He ferries folks out to a dredge, which is clearing the shallows in the ocean. He works up and down the East Coast. I think he's down in Florida at the moment. And, well, they clear the channels to make it safe for shipping. And he ferries the crews out, ferries supplies out, brings various machinery and the like out as well. So he's a water taxi, if you will. I don't mean that anything but the best of ways. He keeps the dredges operating and staffed. And as I mentioned, he has some time to do some fishing. And this is one of the reels he brings fishing with him. All right, a little drop of oil here just to keep that nice and lubricated. Turn it counterclockwise to load it in and screw it up. All right, one more set here. I'm going to remove the top of this so that we can, well, let's see if we need to remove the top or if we have a ring in here. Yeah, that's a hold down. Okay. So some of them have a C-clip in there or a 4-star ring or other piece. This one has the top that comes off, which always makes this one fun because sometimes the line underneath on some of these reels, like I believe Quantum or Okuma uses a similar setup, and darn if the line doesn't come off the spool sometimes. Well, I'm trying to loosen these, and I think you can generally feel when the screw comes out. Okay, got the 3 screws out, and let's see what we have here for a ring. It may be just an inner ring, or it may be the whole thing is going to come off. That's the inner ring, good. So we don't have to worry about the line. So this is one of the reels where Penn has used the drag washer as the eared washer in the setup. And this is an interesting one because it's a 4-drag set, which says they didn't go the 6-drag set that many of the reels have. And some of that is just in anticipation of the amount of drag washing X pounds of X drag kind of thing. And they assume that if you're using this reel, you're only going to use probably about 15 pounds of max drag. These can run dry, or you can grease them. I'll show you how to grease them. This is the HT100. It's Penn's version of a carbon tex drag, or carbon fiber drag. You can put grease on there, just don't overload it. Only put enough that you can see the cross hatching through it. There's 2 sets. The smaller of the circles is the one where these are going to sit. Again, these are keyed washers now. We'll do the same thing on the second one. Set that right on top again. Small circle is the one that's going to hold. So the carbon fiber washer is acting as the hold fast for your spool, and this one is holding the axle shaft. And when you press down, both of them lock in on their parts, and that's how you get the spool and the axle to lock down. And when you want to loosen up, and reversing the process there, the drag washer is going to let go of the spool hold. The metal is going to let go of the hold on the axle, and to the extent that you've backed it down, there'll be more or less pressure to hold it firm. All right, one more after this. We'll put it back on. We'll see how we did. So again, a lot of the features that were in the early Clash are now standard on the Battle. So if you're wondering about this reel, you say, gee, I like the features and functions of this reel, check out the Battle. Battle 3, I guess, or 4. I'm not even sure what version they're on now. But I think around Battle 3 it changed over. Just go to the specifications, see how it's written, and that'll tell you more about the reel. Okay, spool goes back on. Adjuster button goes back on. Tighten it down, make sure it's holding. Then back it off. You don't want to squeeze these down. Okay, gloves are off. It's time for a final test. What did we do? We took the reel completely apart. We showed you how the reel was made, described a little bit of the differences between the Clash and the Battle series, the Penn Fierce Pursuit series. From a gearing standpoint, the biggest difference is that you have a secondary oscillation gear inside, and well, other than that, it's pretty much the same reel. All right, let's give it a try. Turns free and easy. Make sure that bail works. We know that the drag up top works. No, this one's ready for return and ready for Captain Dave to take that fishing again. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. Before I leave, I want to encourage you to subscribe one more time. If you like these videos, I appreciate the sub. And if you want to see more, that's the best way to do it. All right. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I appreciate your career choice and dedication to task. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to wish everybody a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.